By now, many of you are getting familiar with my cousins, Billy Bob and Lidel. They's two funny people. I love them to death. I spent my summers with them. And one of the things that we like to do was fish. They like to hunt. I seldom went hunting with them. But one of the things that happens when you fish a lot is sooner or later you're going to bump into a game warden. Now, game wardens are fine people, love them to death, have a couple as friends. We even fish together. But there's just something about you, any law enforcement type officer that when they's behind you, they gives you the willies. I don't care if you're driving a car and you're following the speed limit and doing everything right, but there's a police car behind you. It just makes you feel nervous. You're just so self-conscious that you're going to do something wrong. You, the same way with game wardens, man. You meet them at the Walmart store and you love them to death. You meet them out in the woods and instantaneously you kind of become nervous, especially if you Lidel. Now, my cousins Billy Bob and Lidel are twins, but personality-wise, they're the exact opposite. While Billy Bob always followed the rules when it come to hunting and fishing, Lidel liked to, kind of fudge the rules a little bit. And I remember one day he was out fishing, you know, in this little lake. He was fishing off the bank, and it wasn't, where he's fishing wasn't too far from the road. And so he's just finished fishing. He got a bucket full of fish, and a game warden pulls up and sees him walking away from the lake, and he gets out and comes up to Lidel and says, "Well, nice bunch of fish you got there, young man." He says, why don't you show me your fishing license?" Lidel, who didn't have a fishing license at the time, says, "Well, officer, these aren't, these are my pet fish. So I didn't catch these fish. It's just, they need exercise. And in that little tank I got at home, they can't get much. So every day I come down here and I throw them in the lake, let them swim around for a while, and then I give a good whistle and they could swim back up and jump in my bucket here, and I take them back home." Of course, and the game warden didn't buy that at all. Who would buy that? And the game warden pulls out his thing to write him a ticket, and Lidel says, "No, really, they're my pet fish." And he said, "Well, if those are pet fish and they can do what you say they can do, you just prove it." So Lidel says, "Okay." So he walks back to the lake and he chunks the fish in the lake. And the game warden said, "Now whistle and have them come back to your and jump in your bucket." And Lidel says, "What fish?" I remember Billy Bob, Lidel, and I was, as I mentioned in some of my other videos, that I like to spend the summers at their farm, and we'd fish all summer long. Well, Billy Bob and I would always have our license, and sometimes Lidel would, and sometimes he wouldn't. Well, we were fishing this pond once, and and again, you could see the pond from the highway, and so we was fishing there, and suddenly a game warden just jumps right out of the bushes behind us. Billy Bob took one look at him, threw his rod down, and took off a running. Of course, the game warden decided to chase the one what was running. So Billy Bob's just running and running and running. The game warden's chasing him. Not unbeknown to the game warden, Lidel's done shot out running the other way. And Lidel runs and runs. Finally, he gets tired. He stops. He puts his hands on his hips. He's breathing deep. And the game warden said, "Okay, young man, show me your fishing license." Lidel pulled his wallet out, pulled his fishing license out, and the game warden said, "Man, you must be one dumb young man. You must be dumb as a skunk. If you've got a fishing license, you don't need to run from me." And Billy Bob says, "No, I don't need to run from you. But my brother back there didn't have one." I remember Billy Bob and Lidel saved up some money, and they'd heard about all this big game that you could go hunting for up in Montana. And so they took their savings and they hopped in their truck and they drove up to Montana. Well, it's one thing to not follow the rules in your own state, especially in the county you live in where you know most of the game wardens anyhow. So Billy Bob insisted that they do things right. So they drive up to the game and fish office there and talk about what's in season and what's not. And the game warden, tells them what he is. He get they pull out their money, and the game warden gives them 3 tags. He gives them a deer tag, an elk tag, and a bear tag. And so they go off hunting, and the next morning they come back. And game warden said, "What are you young men doing back?" He said, "Well, we already got our limit." He says, "You mean you fill those 3 tags?" And Billy Bob says, "Yes." And so the game warden walks out to the truck, and he looks at the deer, and he pulls the tag off and they put on his antler. Says, "Man, that's one fine deer. Look at that rack that he's got." I tell you, for a first timer in this area, it's amazing that on the first day you could come back with such a nice deer. So he walks over to the elk, and he said, "Man, this is a huge elk." He says, "You know, you guys must be really great shots. You shot that deer right between the eyes, and you shot this elk right between the eyes. It's amazing that y'all could go out hunting in one day and get such a fine specimens." He comes over to the bear and he pulls off the tag, and he says, "This is just crazy. I mean, most people go hunting all season, they don't get a bear." I says, "But I got a question for you. I see you shot the deer right between the eyes and the elk right between the eyes and the bear right between the eyes, but I don't understand. Why did you shoot him through both feet?" And Lidel said, "Well, when we shined his light in his face, he did this." Now, I know, unless you know something about redneck humor and rednecks down in the South and Spotlight, and you won't get that last one. But for those of you do, I'm sure you're laughing your buns off. Well, I thank you for listening. I'm going to have more game warden, more hunting and fishing stories with Billy Bob and Lidel coming up, as well as many of their other antics, including the funny things that happen with their outhouses. And man, if you like good old country humor, please, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, tell people, hey, here's something funny for you to watch. I wish you all well.